Just get. All right. Welcome everybody to this meeting of the East Greenwich School Committee. We're going to go ahead and get ourselves started. And I would ask anyone who cares to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first item we have on our agenda tonight is a discussion for an update on our graffiti investigation. So sure if any of you will remember that not too long ago, it was a few months ago, we had some instances of anti-Semitic graffiti in our school buildings. We initiated an internal investigation, and so tonight we're going to have a discussion and share the results of that report.
And racist.
Yes, I'm sorry. All kinds of unpleasant and hateful graffiti. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kenworthy. Go ahead and lead this discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. So I want to start by acknowledging that this has been a difficult period for many members of our district community. The anti-Semitic and racist graffiti incidents that occurred this year were hurtful and disappointing. They impacted students, families, staff, and community members, and understandably raised questions about school climate, safety, and how we respond when incidents like this occur. Tonight, I can announce that the independent review of these incidents and our district response has concluded. We have received the final investigation report from attorney Gina Renzulli-LeMay. The school committee and I have had time to review this report, including its findings and recommendations, and we'll be offering comments this evening. Immediately following this meeting, we will be releasing the full report, some areas redacted to protect the anonymity of students and parents, on our website. I would like to begin my comments this evening by clarifying what this review was and was not. This was not a criminal investigation. The work of identifying individuals responsible for criminal acts falls under the jurisdiction of law enforcement. Attorney Renzulli-LeMay's charge was different. Her role was to independently examine our response as a district, listen to concerns raised by students, families, staff, and community members, review our practices and procedures, and identify opportunities for improvement. While this review was initiated in response to anti-Semitic and racist graffiti incidents, the lessons learned extend more broadly. Our goal is to continue strengthening how we prevent, identify, respond to, and communicate about all incidents involving bias, discrimination, and hate, so that every student feels a sense of safety, belonging, and respect in our schools. Over the past several months, we have taken a number of important steps. We engaged an independent investigator, partnered with educational and community organizations, expanded opportunities for dialogue and learning, and spent considerable time listening to the experiences and perspectives shared by members of our community. I don't think this report should be viewed as a finish line, but rather an important milestone in an ongoing process. This report recognizes many positive efforts already taking place across our district, but also challenges us to continue improving. It offers recommendations related to education, staff training, communication, reporting practices, policy review, school safety, and prevention. Those recommendations deserve careful consideration, and I am committed to working alongside the school committee, our staff, students, families, and community partners to develop a thoughtful plan for implementation. No report can erase the hurt caused by these incidents, but I hope this process has demonstrated we are willing to listen, reflect honestly, take action and steps forward when concerns are raised. I want to thank attorney Renzulli-LeMay for her thorough and thoughtful work. I also want to thank the many students, families, staff members, community leaders, faith leaders, and partner organizations who participated in this process and shared their perspectives. Most importantly, I want to thank those who spoke up, even when it was difficult, because their voices have helped shape the work ahead. As we conclude this school year and begin planning for next year, we are focused on ensuring that every student in our district is respected and supported at school. Thank you.
Thank you. So, since this is on our agenda as a discussion item, this is an opportunity for anyone on the school committee who has any comments or any questions regarding this report. I know we've all had time to read it and ask questions in our individual capacity, but if there's anything that anyone would like to discuss here, now is the opportunity. So, is there anyone who has anything? I know, like I said, I know we've had an opportunity to ask questions individually, but if anyone feels they want to ask any of those things in public, just so we know that they've been asked, feel free. Yes, Tim.
I have a few. First one comment, I thought the report was very thorough, very helpful. It's frightening, how kids seem to, I suppose they always have, but the need to be transgressive and to do things where you don't really understand exactly what you're doing, but you still need to follow through. I think that's part of adolescence, but the thing that was most disturbing is that some of these kids are practiced liars about what they did and didn't do, and don't seem to be repentant or reflective afterwards either. So it was very disappointing. I also think it's impossible to read that report without candidly acknowledging that much of this starts in the home. It's not just kids consuming social media. That's certainly a part of it. But there's some, deeply baked bias and prejudice that kids bring into the school buildings every day from their own lives and their own situations. And it's depressing, quite honestly. I wanted to ask just a couple of questions. Aubrey, for you, we haven't had the chance to talk. When Gina's talking about what McKee did a few years ago and the mandated Holocaust and genocide studies in the high school. So it's mandated to have those programs, but they're elective in nature. They're not mandated as core curriculum graduation requirements. What was the rationale for that back in 2018? And is there any movement to maybe tighten those up?
I would imagine the rationale was to make sure, I know there's been a strong push, I think particularly during that time, there were a group of people who were Holocaust deniers nationally. And so I know there was a strong push nationally to advance legislation that required some kind of Holocaust genocide education in schools. As far as a push to make that a mandatory course for all students to take, I have not heard about that, but certainly, individual districts could mandate that if they so chose.
Okay. And then another question. I know you do this. I've never had the opportunity to see it. I hold you in high esteem, but the training you do every year with kids,
Yes.
can you just tell us about that a little? And I guess my question is, because I really don't know. So if I have this wrong, you'll let me know. But in anything where you're trying to make maximum impact and especially change some behaviors in certain cases, I think it's generally believed that role playing and more active participatory things where you have to do things stick with the audience a lot longer than just passively consuming content, no matter how brilliantly that content is delivered. So can you just tell us about how those sessions work? And do you see any opportunity, if I ask you, to just creatively, what would be the next generation of what you do that might make it more impactful?
Sure. So I should clarify that I am just a small portion of the training that takes place. And there is some, and Dr. Page can speak to this, but there is some role playing that occurs with the students. So typically what has happened is I do kind of a presentation, and it's fairly short, like it kind of, we try to hit the points that we need to hit. It's just at the high school. And it's really around social media and any kind of interaction outside of school, typically, on either social media or through like DMs on, Snapchat, stuff like that. just kind of going over different rules for students. One being that just because I think there's a misperception from students that number one, if they're doing something outside of school, like they could never be disciplined for that in school and it could never affect their permanent record. And so it's kind of a hi, welcome to high school. Like this actually counts now. Like your permanent record will be seen potentially by, colleges or employers or people who ask for it. And so you should know that your actions outside of school could potentially be disciplined in school if they make their way back to school and cause a substantial disruption. So we talk a little bit about that, and also about hate speech generally, about how if you are texting, even if you're not the person who started a text, if you are passing along a photo, an inappropriate photo of another student or an underage student, it doesn't matter that you may have been the 50th person to get this. If you pass it along to someone else, like you could be just as liable. And I really talk about discipline at the school level and like what that could mean for you. We talk a little bit about your brand on social media and, making sure that your brand is what you want it to be, because it will follow you in a way that none of us had to worry about when we were in high school or college. So that's really what my piece is. Then I know the SRO talks a little bit about criminal liability, which is like the, kind of the next step up from that. And then the students come on and talk about being, and you can probably do a better job of explaining this, Dr. Page, but really being someone who steps like an ally, who steps in, that you don't just like sit back and watch bullying occur, that it's important to not only not do it, but also to be an ally to other students. And that's where there's like a video and there's some role playing and the older students come and talk to younger students about it. And so that's the more interactive part. My part is really succinct. It usually, they tell me that it usually ends up with like a lot of students coming to talk to either the counselor or the social worker to say like, hey, I may have done this and I didn't know that I shouldn't have done that. And also, and I try to make it not super focused on here are all the things that might get you in trouble, but more of a, hey, you should know what your rights are as a student at school, that this isn't okay if something like this happens to you, and also you should know that.
Do they ask you First Amendment type questions? Well, what if I want to say this or that?
No,
No.
they don't ask me a ton of questions. Sometimes we get questions that are more specific. I think particularly about passing along the text. Like that seems to be something that is really shocking to students and something that I say to my own kids too. Like you may be in a group chat, and if you then like take whatever that picture is or a screenshot or something and send it along to other people, you are just as liable as the first person. And that I don't think they get. And there are, some cases involving like that happening to a student then committing suicide. Like there are a bunch of really serious cases, and there are some Rhode Island cases about bullying on sports between students on sports teams that occurred really like on Snapchat. That there's a North Kingstown case that I was involved in that I talk about a little bit, which I think they're always like, oh, North Kingstown, that's like right near us that this happened.
Right.
So yeah, I would like to think that I'm sure we could improve it. I would like to think that it's impactful, but I really am just like a very small slice of this overall.
Okay. Well, thank you for all that. And Pat, so I don't know this. So when we say that we do the ADL No Place for Hate program, and I went and I read up on that stuff. So one of the things is they have a student council. So when do we execute that, and what quick comments would you make about how that works?
Students that went through the formal peer-to-peer training at URI. So it's all about how do you be a peer mentor, an advocate, a supporter, and how do you enlist the proper credentialed resources if a student is in trouble, or if there is a situation that's unfolding that may go awry, right? Similar to what they've learned about in this awareness type of training.
Yeah.
What we've done is we have done the actual modules where the students at the high school go into our advisory periods. So you have upperclassmen going in and running these very interactive mini lessons, all about identity, about branding, about language and words mattering. They also went down to the middle school this year, which I think is a great model, because as you know, messages sometimes land and take hold, when it's someone closer in age,
For
or
sure.
it is an adult, who is talking at you versus someone that you can relate to. I think that was a very effective
Is
model
it,
that we
is
could
it,
scale.
is it episodic or is it steady state? I mean, does it go through the year and there's
It's
different?
been going,
pulsed?
it started so it started before this particular event. And it's challenging just based on the schedule and students' availability to try and get a cadence to it. But I think that is something that we definitely want to do next year as we start to build out our working calendar, is to say that we are going to identify certain advisory periods where this is going to happen.
Well, again, I'm sure others have questions and comments and stuff like that. Let me just say this quickly. I just jotted down a few things. First of all, tonight, we're gonna look at a school climate policy for the second read. I know the report recommends that. We started work on that before Gina told us that was a good idea. We need one. I think that fills a, real gap in our policy portfolio and in the way we, oversee the schools. So I think that's one of the best things we can do. I know you'll all give due consideration to that. We worked hard on that. Another thing on the policy front, just speaking for the policy committee, the mobile phones. We tried to act, early to get the mobile phones out from bell to bell. I think that was largely successful, although not to debate here, but we hear too much anecdotal evidence that, kids still have them around, kids are still relying on them. And when you read the report and you see what's going on the phones, that's troubling. So I know we will look in the policy committee at how we can tighten that up. And then we would, of course, ask the educators to really bring as many good ideas as you can in our second year plus of that policy being in effect to tighten it up so it's more effective than ever. I guess third, it seemed to be a leaky bucket, but these school trips that are so valued by so many are also, real vehicles for this stuff. When you get out of school buildings and stuff like that, I remember going to Gettysburg. I remember going to Lexington and Concord from New York. I remember these bus trips and stuff like that. It's wild. I want to know if we can also try to look at some ways to maybe tighten that up about what goes on in those out of school, off campus opportunities. I noted the lack of, again, it's kind of baked in the cake, but the lack of consistency school to school. And again, maybe this is a little bit more the elementary schools because they tend to be, kind of independent educational units within the broader thing. But, Gina in several places comments on that. And it is hard when, different administrations at the building level have different approaches in these kinds of situations. I think that's something that we should look at. The SRO, we need to have a memorandum of understanding with the police department of what the SRO does.
That was gonna be.
It's unacceptable.
Mhm.
Without belaboring it, these people are untrained. You hope that they have some common sense around adolescence. They try to screen them, but they don't report to us. We have no input into them. We don't know what they do. We've always been troubled by that. I think we need to get our arms around that.
I think they are trained. There's some.
So,
I mean, I think that like it's not.
it's the police department.
No, like, yeah.
That one's good. That one doesn't know anything.
There's
That one's good.
the opportunity, if you look
Yes.
at the memorandum of understanding and policy that Barrington has at this point, it
Mhm.
is unbelievably comprehensive to use as a model. I mean, they have spent a lot of time on it, and
And we have,
it's a good one to look at as a starting point.
And
And I know we've
we
tried
have
to do
tried.
this before.
and I think what I was gonna say to that, just based on the recommendations in this report, I know that during these incidents, we tried to make sure that we were cooperating and working like in tandem with the police as they were doing their own investigation. So I don't want to minimize that cooperation. I think we were all trying to work community-wide on this issue. But I do think it's important that the fact that the investigations happened kind of on their own. They were not,
Yeah, I don't understand.
I feel like this brings to light a point we've been
I'm
trying
not sure
to
that
make.
part could have been any different though, as far as the police investigation and our.
No, not the
investigation,
police
right?
investigation, but the instigation of a report by an SRO that was not necessarily in coordination with the district, and that's fine if that's.
That should be.
We
part
have
of-
SROs in our building, they don't report to the district. And we don't have a clear memorandum of understanding or agreement right now with the police department as to the roles and responsibilities necessarily and duties of the SROs in the buildings. And this is not new. This is something we have been trying to address on this, in this committee for years and years. And I think this report just,
Yeah.
brings it even more to light why it's important to
Absolutely.
have something like that, because when we have these incidents, having all the adults in the room be on the same page, I think is incredibly important. If we're going to send a comprehensive, unified message out to the students, to the faculty, to everybody, that's just another piece of it. And that stood out
Yeah.
because there was such a discussion this time in the community about working with the police. I mean, this is the number one way that the district can work in cooperation with the police department when it comes to our students. So I just, think that's
And
important.
the last thing I noted was just again, I think there are some curriculum implications here that we want to look at, which we can do again in the committee. Aubrey, what you were describing before, of course, it makes all the sense in the world. It's really important, but they are a bit different. I mean, bullying is the high level wrong, but the bias and discrimination as the, instrument of the bullying needs to be addressed at the root cause. So you're always going to have bullying and stuff like that. We do everything we can to mitigate that, but this is a special subset of that. So I'll just tell you one thing. I have been looking at this, and we'll be able to go through this in the curriculum committee in the coming months. I placed a call, and I think we can pull this off in the fall, but Omer Bartov is a professor at Brown. He's a world-class expert on the Holocaust. He's a decorated soldier in the Yom Kippur War. And he's probably, he's a world-class resource, but I think I just read his book, which I cannot recommend enough. I won't give you the title because it'll sound political. It's called Israel, What Went Wrong. He was a committed Zionist, but he's brilliant at separating out anti-Semitism from a political agenda and all the other things that complicate that. And he's also very good at defining genocide wherever it happens. So I know we teach the Armenian genocide. I know we teach do we do Southwest Africa and right? Okay. So okay, Tutsis and Hutus, good, a lot of genocide to cover, absolutely,
Don't think it's.
that's great.
Right.
But yeah, but anyway, too often these questions, have a political overtone, and I think a lot of the bias and, ignorance comes from a political standpoint as opposed to, really understanding history and man's inhumanity to man, let's say. So anyway, I'm looking at to see if we can get him in the fall. And so far, he's in Israel right now, but he goes back in the summer. But he's just a brilliant guy. I think it'd be really interesting. So that's my piece.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions? I have like one, but I want to make sure everyone has a chance to talk. Yes, Claire.
Yeah, I think everything that is a lot of it. I think one of the things that that's just really like notable and I think really like a lot of this is probably not real captured through or like addressed through official means, right? Like culture and reporting,
Yeah.
like reporting from students to administrators, like all that kind of stuff. Like it's gonna be hard to mandate that kids say something, but to continue to work on the culture. I think from what I've been told since I arrived here that previously there's a lot less reporting about all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And that's really increased. And so sometimes it looks like, you know, our troubles have increased, but a lot of the times that just means that people are better at
Mhm,
talking about it,
mhm.
better at seeing it,
Yes.
honestly.
Yes.
And then the administrators are able to respond to things if they are told. All of this is so delicate and so sensitive and there's such a, always feels like there's such a risk at saying the wrong thing or coming at it, highlighting one thing or not highlighting another thing and not making sure that all voices get heard, but nobody and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that there are types of discrimination, types of teasing, taunting words written on bathrooms that we react less to as a culture and as a group. Like one of the things that are we talking about within the report? Are we?
It's in the
Are
report.
you? Can we talk
They're
about?
going to
Sorry.
be, they're probably going to be released.
Okay.
It's going to be released event.
Like the story of racist graffiti.
Yep.
Being found and there being
Mhm.
less of a like coordinate, less of a
Right.
what's it called? Like people were less like put into action, which makes sense on a number of levels. For one thing, we have our culture has our country has a history of racism that's embedded
Mhm.
into the history of our country. I don't know if y'all have been informed about that, but I think everybody here probably knows more than most of the population in the world, or the country. But because of that, we underreact or we expect that there will be a certain amount of racial taunting, a certain amount of targeting kids for their perceived or uh stated sexual orientation or gender identity. We don't have to react with the same degree, like there's no reason to treat everything the same, but it is important, I think, to take a look at the response that we've been able to have in this kind of, because there were things that happened in succession, and to sort of look at how we can bring that energy forward to see the kids who are being taunted or being othered or being excluded or being shamed or whatever, and don't think it's newsworthy. Like the victim doesn't think it's newsworthy. Or the teacher that sees it doesn't note it as being different than what happens every day, because the teacher cannot report something that happens every single day, right? Like, so I think that's really important. And it's not to undermine any experiences that anyone has had or anything that we've done. Somebody to say that, like, I think we should carry it over. The risk, of course, is being like, well, but what about, like, why isn't anybody talking about this thing that's real? And that's the opposite of what I want to bring to this. It's like more, bigger, more. It is a hard thing to be. If there's racist graffiti in a bathroom and that graffiti would pierce the heart of fewer kids in the school, we have to be even more careful about acting on it. We need to make sure that it's not that the things that we're not impacted by it. Just to throw out like 11 instances reported about race, 3 religions, 5 sexual orientation, and 4 disability, which is just a reminder that we're not clear of anything.
And that's reported.
And that's reported.
And
She makes a
that,
big distinction about
yeah.
that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we couldn't, and honestly, I like, in like, I was over disclosing, like, I have heard things from my kids before I was an employee that I didn't report to anybody because I was like, well, yeah, some people are gonna just say your parents are going to hell for being gay, but you know, we're gonna live with our life, we're gonna live our lives and it's gonna be okay. And it was okay, but that's an example of like, I think that's normal, and like I'm a full grown up, you know, we gotta change what we think is normal. And one more thing, to make sure that it's all a learning experience, right? Like to make sure that this is not, we assign all of these adult thoughts and motivations, and you know, this person must have a sophisticated knowledge of the history of that particular phrase or symbol, and they are putting it out there. We have to sort of assume naivete over everything else. because they're our students and it's our job to, not my job, to teach them, you know. And they're not supposed to come in here and know.
Is there anything, I mean, this is. I'm not being critical in any way, but I am asking, so I'll ask you, Pat, because I know you. Is there anything you can think of where there are more things we can do to encourage more reporting? Because again, when you read that report, I think you're struck by kids not wanting to rat out other kids, kids fearing being swept up in a chain of things and stuff like that. And I know we go through all the appropriate training and stuff like that, but again, these are adolescents, it's hard to make stick. Any things you can think of or that you might have tried that would increase the volume of reporting and, you know, some whistleblower act that we can, you know, get more of this out there?
I think what is very helpful is I'm having a difficulty contextualizing all of this because I haven't seen the report.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's what I was gonna say, I don't wanna put you on
I'm
the
so
spot.
sorry.
Pat.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so,
Getting.
Been really careful here.
I'm trying to create my line here.
That's kind of unfair thing to ask.
And I-
No, but I
Sorry,
just
sorry,
pulled
sorry.
out something, if I may, that you said.
See, usually you know stuff and we don't know. It's so.
About describing adult understanding and contextualization of issues to our children. One point, and I don't know whether this was brought up at all, is our students are on these multiplayer online gaming platforms. Those were meant to be fun, entertainment, global connection. We also know that it is unsupervised, unmoderated spaces in which some of this dialogue happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
I am not in these spaces, but I hear about it from students. And they're describing what the conversations are. So I think that's a whole other layer to this that maybe we weren't dealing with X number of years ago. So Tim, to answer your question, I think I need to read the report more thoroughly.
Of course.
See what you've identified based on this conversation as some of the opportunities for us to be looking at things differently. Trying to make it easier, less pressure points, pinpoints for students, you know, the friction, as you would say, make it less frictionless for them to be able to report and engage in more of these organic dialogues about what they're feeling, right? Maybe even before an incident arises, but I need to read.
I'm so sorry. I had, yeah.
Something.
I had no idea. You'll have many more thoughts and they'll be on point because you're much closer to the action, but.
well, and I think that is sort of what I wanted to comment on a little, because I think when you first read the recommendations, it feels disappointing. But then you have to remember, like, we are getting this contextualized overview, and each individual person that's being discussed in this report or that was talked to in this report, it only has their own particular experience that they're dealing with. So
Can you say why it's disappointing? Because
just, you know, when I read, not the report is disappointing, the results are
But what happened?
right. And when you read, as everyone who wants to will be able to soon, you know, where it talks just about, just in general, much more pervasive than one would hope across all types of speech and behavior you would not want to see at all levels, like, of the community. And that is not to point fingers at anybody. I think it's just when it's summed up like this, that's how it feels and that's how it sounds. And then you have to remember that that is the summation of talking to individual people who made the best decisions that they could in the moment in their own personal capacity when dealing with information. Which I think in the moment, like as a parent or as an administrator, it seems right, but then you're doing that not in the context of this whole. And we now have this bigger picture that I think is different than what I think each person would have individually thought if you asked them one-on-one. And I think we have a real responsibility to do something about that. And I wanted to reiterate what Claire said. I think we used to have more trouble with reporting, I think, with things that become turn into Title IX investigations. And so for a while, it seemed like we just had so many, but that is because we created an environment where students and staff were more educated about what constituted something like that and made a very clear pathway for reporting and taking action. I think the big part of that is they saw us do something about the information that we received. And so it seemed much more important than to actually come and report because there was no dead end. There was no, well, I said something and nothing happened. This report makes me feel clearly like we still have work to do. Just we've done a good job, I think, in that particular area, and now we need to create processes and protocols that will do the same thing for this. Because I will not believe that the instances that we hear about in here where people didn't say something were just people don't. I am going to choose not to believe that people just don't care or don't know. They might not know what to do or what there is to do. And in any kind of institution or system, that can happen. I mean, you might know that something's not right, but you have nowhere to put it. You don't know who to bring it to. And so I think it is now clearly our job to make it much more apparent and obvious and clear to everyone involved what that process or that pathway is. And we clearly have to make it easier for our administrators to be able to deal with this. I think that was another huge takeaway from this is we have very few staff trying to deal with the totality of all of these circumstances. And so I know that, I know this is different from the when we do Title IX, but often we get the superintendent's like findings and recommendations. And so what I would ask, and this is not something that's going to be quick, I think we should go through possibly as a committee with you, Dr. Kenworthy, with you, Dr. Whoever we think needs to be, and go through really closely each one of these recommendations and really think about how we're going to create that protocol and how we can address each of these things, whether it's through policy. I mean, one of the things was that the investigator wasn't sure what our plan was for cameras. Well, we can't really make that public, but we can make it clear to our administrators like what that plan is going to be in the new buildings and moving forward and how they're going to be able to use that to help and what we don't have to wait for them to be up before we decide how we're going to use them. Like we should work on that now and make it clear that this is something we're going to be using.
That revised policy is only a year old though. I mean,
no,
we have to go back at it, sure.
But I just mean letting them know we're going to have them.
Yeah.
Like that's something that most people don't know. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, putting that ADT sign in your yard. If someone just thinks you have a camera, they behave different or they no. And I think some of that helped. Things like that. Having like insisting upon an MOA with our SROs if they are going to continue to remain in the building. And I am not saying anything against our SROs. This is nothing against them or anybody. But I think there are a lot of things that we can actually take real action on. And I think that is the kind of action that leads to reporting. When people understand what their actual responsibility is when they see something and where to bring it, I think we can do a lot to address so much of what we're reading in this report. You know, like I said, my first reaction was to be just like, oh. But then it's like, no, this is actually this is something we can do. We know what we should be doing. I refuse to believe that most people don't know what we should be doing. We just haven't told them. We haven't made it clear. And so we just need to do that. And I think once we do, I am confident that it will improve the situation because we've seen it work.
Can I just build off of that?
Yes,
That
please.
legal sense, just having been through our initial kind of Title IX struggles and then getting to a better place with our Title IX stuff. Doing that initial investigation that sort of kicked off us taking really enhancing our Title IX protocols. A lot of the students that I spoke with at the time, like, kind of knew that this was not okay, but not really. And it was like very much a slippery slope where like maybe there was something that was said that seemed like kind of weird, but then things really like kind of ballooned out of control. And sometimes, and I think we see this in the report, like I kind of know this is wrong, but maybe I'm sort of a participant at this point because I sat and watched
Yep.
somebody do this, and like, where is the
Mhm.
safe space to be able to say something? And I think
Yeah.
we saw similar things with Title IX, like, well, I kind of felt like this was my fault because I was going along with it for a long time. And so I definitely think that we can build off that for not
Yeah.
just like anti-Semitism, but also like anti-LGBTQ plus,
All of it.
you know, comments, anti, you know, racist comment. Like there are so many things we can build off of, and
Yes.
we have our anti-harassment policy, which I think we could make better and, you know, and clean up and make something more effective. And I also think the SRO piece, having an MOA and a policy, or a policy, one or the other,
Mhm.
or both, I think also like helps set expectations, because sometimes kids and parents don't want to report things because they think, oh my God, this will immediately go to the police.
Yes.
And I think it makes things much more clear, and particularly I really like that Barrington has included like a huge piece on students with disabilities, and like being able to, if you so choose, sit down with an SRO and share that you have a student who has a disability, so they, only if you choose.
Does it have 20 pages on restorative justice?
Well, it's, I mean, it has a lot of,
Which I like, but
I think
Barrington's like,
it
oh.
sets expectations. I'm not saying you should do exactly what they did,
Just-
but I think it sets expectations so people know, like,
Well-
if this is not a criminal matter,
yes.
then it's not gonna go to the police.
That's cute.
And also, if I'm worried about my child being in school with an SRO because they have a disability, or, you know, I can disclose that to the SRO, and like, we can have an agreement so that maybe like a student with autism who is not responding in the way that a police officer would expect them to respond isn't treated in a way so that a parent's not a nervous wreck to send their kid to school with an SRO. So I mean, I think there are definitely things that we can do with that will set expectations that may help with
Yes.
reporting and make people feel more comfortable to report. Because even in this report, you see that some parents were kind of like knew what might be going on, but like felt uncomfortable to say something. And so I think there's some work we can do there, like to shift culture a little bit. I agree with you, and like we definitely did it with Title IX,
We
so
did.
it seems like we can do this.
And
again.
it felt bad at first because then we just had a ton of them.
Yeah.
But I will say this, I felt a lot better having a ton of them, feeling much more confident that we were addressing the majority of what was happening, as opposed to knowing that things were happening and we weren't helping. And I think we need to, this is a level setting expectations problem. Okay, I am choose to look at it that way, as opposed to a overwhelming hate problem, or and not to minimize it, but I feel like we aren't able to address this as well as we should be right now, because we have not level set, and we may have thought that we did because we have a certain set of expectations, but again, we're inside ourselves. We don't know what everybody's are unless we clearly set them. And it is obvious that we have not clearly set what the expectations are surrounding this, despite having a policy. You know, we don't have a set communication.
well, I mean, you know,
we don't have these things, and
I think you'll agree. You know, we didn't have the data, you know, about the scope of the problem in many ways until we read this report too.
and that is partly
It
because
quantifies building by building by building. No, I know, but it's.
yes,
To the school committee, we've got to make sure that actually.
and I know we have policies on that, but we've never really been able to implement them. Just on, there are so many things that are supposed to be reported when we do the school committee.
We have a checklist, and
We
I
do.
think I will share that with you.
Yeah.
Of like all of the things that are supposed to be reported out like month by month
Yeah.
to the.
We were just talking about that in our last.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should.
Your
make sure that
checklist.
we Dig into it.
Yep.
And it's just
My
as
way.
much on, I will take responsibility for that too, when I'm in agenda setting meetings, you know, when we're in agenda setting meetings with the superintendents, we don't always reference that back to make sure those things get put on the agenda like they should, and so.
The calendar.
Nope, yes,
The calendar.
absolutely, so,
Can I add one more thing?
yes, please.
I just wanted to just highlight one more piece. I mean, this is another kind of risky thing, but I think if we can, if as we talk about this, we can remember, like, kind of keep in mind the concept of intersectionality, the concept of like, people are experiencing more than one
One
thing at a
thing,
time.
yep.
And in that related, that youth, children, people of all ages really, often if they're wondering about something, if they have a question about something, if something is in their mind, they'll use that word or use that phrase or say something that makes it sound like they know what they're saying, instead of saying like, hey, what is that word mean? Like, I heard this on, and I think, so you might hear, someone say something that sounds like a very clear statement that is actually a question.
Yeah.
And of course, high schoolers are gonna be different than elementary schoolers. And the other thing that I think is super, super important that we just have to say out loud, and it's not to, that we can say, that we can look at something and say, the person who experiences a harm has their harm is complete. Like they need to know, they need to accommodate no one. And the person who is, or people who are responsible for the harm sometimes have mitigating factors, trauma, echolalia, the autism spectrum, where words and intentions and all sorts of things really inform the degree to which there's like mens rea, I guess, kind of like in those statements. And so restorative justice, I don't know if that's like a trigger, but we don't have to, like, we can just look at like rehabilitation and
These are
like
kids.
and
We
being
understand.
holistic about looking at it without saying like, oh well, that kid's, he didn't mean that, like, you're fine, because you're not fine, you're not fine, you're not fine.
I think when I'm talking about trying to come up with how we are going to address the recommendations in this report, it is definitely not with an eye towards like anything punitive necessary or anything like that. What we are trying to do is not just, okay, that bad thing happened and now we have to fix the bad thing.
Right.
We want to address the pervasiveness of what is happening in order to lessen it.
Yeah.
What we want ultimately is to have expectations of how we treat one another by setting these up so that the treatment gets better. And when it isn't, we have very clear ways for people to address the harm.
And I think a rehabilitative kind of view of it helps with reporting too, because you don't want to tell somebody that your friend said something knowing that they're going to get kicked out of school or whatever, but knowing that they might need a little help to not say that,
Yes, so I think, that is definitely the spirit in which we will look at this. Because again, we're talking about children and we're talking about trying to help adults whose job it is to help children. And we want to give them all the tools that they need to be able to do that as best they can.
But if kids feel that they can report something to help their friend without it becoming known or backfiring, they'll do it.
Right. And that's
They
what
need whistleblower protection.
But these things are, you don't necessarily want to get your friend in trouble, even if
Yeah,
your friend
but you
says
want to
something
help
that
your
hurts
friend
like
get a grip.
deeply, yeah.
And we can put things in place that policy wise, that may not necessarily make you want to tell on your friend, because I understand that feeling. Even like with your own kids, you're like, oh, your friend, maybe, I understand that instinct. But I also think on a policy level, Tim, that there are things we can put in that anti-harassment policy. Like if we do find, that's number one, putting supports in place immediately like we do for Title IX, which I think is incredibly helpful, and we should make like protocol across the board anytime something happens where a student's feeling bullied or harassed. Number two, I have some districts who have like a mandatory, once we find out like it's determined that you did bully someone or that you did, use hate speech or you violated the harassment policy, you have to meet with the social worker or some kind of mental health professional on a regular basis. And like, this is part of our policy. So it's not an optional thing, like it has to happen. And I think like we're probably really good or better about doing that at secondary because they are much more experienced at running these investigations and figuring out the supports. And then the third piece being a lot of the majority of the time, and I think this gets to what Claire was saying, like the student who is seen as the transgressor also has things that they are dealing with. Oftentimes they have an IEP. Oftentimes they are struggling with behavior. we are required by law, and this is where, Neil comes in, to go back and have a team meeting each time something like that happens and say, what do we need to adjust in this student's IEP to provide the appropriate supports for them? And so I think that that's something that we're maybe not doing with Fidelity, and could also be more explicitly laid out in a policy. If the student has an IEP, this is what we need to do. If we suspect at this point, after all of this, that this student might have a disability, this is what we need to do. We can be explicit about that in
That's
policy, so that, especially I think at the elementary level, where the administrators just are not as used to doing, it's a smaller student population, there are less of these incidents, like Pat's a pro at doing that, because she does it a lot. But everybody's not, and Melissa and Beth are pros at doing this because they do it a lot. But at the elementary level, like, this may not happen a lot. And so I think the path isn't as clear, and we can probably make that path a little bit more clear. And getting those supports in place when a student is like 9 to 10 is
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's another area she doesn't really touch in the report. I'm not critical of that, but we just experienced some analog bias and discrimination, where you're scratching words on a wall. I mean, the impact of AI and deep fakes and the ability to do this with some anonymity and with production values around your hate, and to do it at scale, those are really frightening things. So that's something that we're going to be looking at also, because increasingly nationally, school districts need deep fake policies that address specific technological means to do this. And again, it's a subset of a bigger thing, but I just think it makes the problem infinitely worse. So,
Yes, Jane.
So we had a biracial foster child go through the system 25 years ago, and he encountered much of the same discrimination based on race and socioeconomic status. So we have absolutely no control over what happens outside of school. Our society is not gonna, this is not gonna go away. But in other places I've worked, the idea was that the school should be a safe place for everybody, regardless of if you have disabilities, if you are of a certain religion, if you are of a certain race, if you are of a certain socioeconomic status. No one should feel that they don't belong here. And I think that's, again, this is a big step in the right direction, because you accomplish that through policies and, an absolutely zero tolerance policy and proactive, corrective action when you can take it. But I think it's really important that every student feel safe here, feel like they belong here.
In the fullness of who they are.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say too, because I know we talked a lot about people within the buildings, I do not want to neglect parents, because that is mentioned in here, and whenever there are investigations, parents are part of that, and I want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're also making it safe for parents to be able to feel like they know what our expectations are and can do the right thing, and also the right thing for their child, and have those be the same thing. No parent wants to be put in a position where they know that they should say something, but your instinct to protect your own child because you're not 100% sure what might happen to them kicks in. And I think that is experienced by parents. At least that is what the report suggests, and I would hope that we would also take that into consideration and ensure that we are, whatever systems we are setting up, make it easier for parents to be able to help their children and help in situations like this. So, yeah. Anything else? There's nothing else from the committee. The next item on our agenda is public comment. So we have anyone who is signed up or online for public comment, which obviously can be anything not on the agenda, as well as the discussion we just had. We don't have anybody? Do we have anybody online, Chris? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for that discussion. And I think we'll be talking soon about how we move forward with this, the results. All right, so next we have approval of minutes. Where's my? We have executive session and regular meeting minutes of June 2nd, 2020. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. So moved by Jean, by Will. Is there any discussion about the minutes? All those in favor?
We will.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Minutes are approved. Yes. We'll make sure to tell me who's here. I don't remember. And then next we are moving on to our superintendent's report. And back over to Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you again, Ms. Powell. Wanted to start tonight with we're at our coming up on the end of the school year here. We will end on Thursday. And we had our extended school year due to our larger than usual number of snow days. But we will finally conclude the school year on Thursday, just prior to the Juneteenth holiday. So we're in the midst of our end of year activities. So that includes a lot of the moving up ceremonies at each of our schools. So those have been great to attend. Sunday, we had, of course, the culminating event in the district with graduation for the East Greenwich High School class of 2026 at the Providence Performing Arts Center. So that was a great afternoon and celebration to send off our recent graduates. So we have 2 events left. Tomorrow morning, I will be attending the 5th grade move up ceremony at Hannaford. And then later in the morning, the 8th grade ceremony here at Cole Middle School. And that will wrap up our end of year ceremonies. Again, we will conclude the school year on Thursday. So with that, our spring athletic season has also wrapped up. So Ms. Rose, our athletic director, did prepare some highlights, which it would be easier to kind of read through. So that includes our teams at both East Greenwich High School and Cole Middle School. So we had a lot of successes all around. Probably start with our boys tennis team was undefeated throughout the entire season and finished as the Division II state champions. And then our boys baseball team won the Division II championship, and it's been quite a while for them. So that was great to see. Many of our other teams, or most of our other teams, had successful seasons as well. Our girls lacrosse team came, they just lost to one team the entire season. Happened to be once in the regular season and then once in the championship. But they had a great season all the way down to our baseball and softball teams here at Cole as well. Under school construction and redistricting, so as we conclude the school year, keep telling everyone, we are being told that when, many of us will probably get a view of the construction projects at different times of summer, but when students and families come back in the fall, they are going to see, tremendous progress on all of our 3 main projects. The Hannaford and Frenchtown structures will start to really look like schools at that point, and our East Greenwich High School addition and renovations will be near completion. So those throughout the summer, those information and updates can continue to be found on our school construction project link. I also want to mention, since our last meeting, we did have we ended up with one elementary event due to the weather canceling the event at Hannaford, but on June 6th, we had the Touch a Truck and beam raising event at Frenchtown, and ended up just making that a combined event. Both schools, both PTGs worked together on that. Many committee members were there as well, and it was just great to see. You never know what the turnout's going to be, and I'm terrible at estimating those people, but I mean, I think there were a couple hundred people in and out throughout the morning, so that was great to see. And then, of course, with redistricting, we will be continuing our efforts there. I did send out one update since our last meeting, just to kind of again touch base on that with all families. For now, we're going to open next school year. It'll be our last year with the current configurations in schools, and we will continue to just get ready for everything for the opening of the 2027-28 school year. So what I'm anticipating is once we have next school year successfully underway in the fall. I'm already working with Mr. Shive in our tech department. We're going to generate a letter to each of the elementary families that we know will be with us 27 and 28. Just confirming, I think most people, have seen the maps at this point, but we will confirm with all families what their designated elementary school assignments will be for the 27-28 school year. And then be able to, answer questions from there if needed. And then with that, just work on all of the, we have we had a leadership team meeting today and we talked about just, a lot of stuff that will be underway next year with all of the move management that will need to take place. We talked a little bit about the elementary staffing analysis last meeting. That's going to come on the agenda again tonight, but a lot to figure out there, and then work with our, both of our collective bargaining units really on the process for where individuals are going to land in buildings. And of course, the closing of Eldridge, and we'll make sure that we have the proper celebration in place for that. Okay. So with that, onto the personnel report. Just want to did have a couple of recent resignations. So I want to thank Mr. Michael Micheletti, who had been our district network manager. He is resigning with us to go work for the town, so he won't be too far. We'll know where to find him, but we wish him all the best. And then Jaden Whiteman, music teacher here at Cole. This was also a recent resignation. He found an opportunity in another district closer to home, so we wish him the best. And then up top of the report, you'll notice we do have a few appointments that we've been able to make, which is good. So these again will be positions for next year, where we have a lot underway with the hiring process for both teachers and paraprofessionals. But we did have some individuals that had been with us who just needed to solidify some things with their certification. So I've been able to offer positions for next year to Megan Longo as a science teacher at East Greenwich High School, Molly Miranda as a library media specialist at Cole, and Marley Ritako as a preschool teacher at Meadowbrook. So we are looking forward to having those individuals back.
Dr. Kenwood,
Yes.
may I ask you, so sensitive topic, but it really shouldn't be. So we lost our network administrator to the town. This is not the first time we've had one of our employees migrate to the town.
I have heard, yes.
Can we have an anti-poaching memo of understanding to the town? Because honestly, it's,
I know.
I mean,
Compete with the town.
Yeah.
we chuckle about it, but it's
I know.
also, it's a
No,
fact.
I don't know if we could actually enforce in them.
mentioned as well. I've
What do you think?
one of the,
I'm mentioning it publicly just so it's out there, so people know.
yeah.
Can't work for the town for.
I mean, we all
We
technically have
can't-
one.
We can't have restraint of trade. We can't keep somebody from pursuing a better job, but honestly, I mean, the town does this as a conscious strategy and it's wrong.
We have non-compete agreements for
It's
specific
in
things.
the contract.
I mean, we all technically have one.
What do you think?
We could.
I don't know that it would
just
go
talk
very
to
far,
Ben
anyone
to-
would take it, but.
Yeah, I would just not want to do anything that would make it more difficult for us to attract
Yeah.
prospective candidates. I mean, I will say on a positive note,
Just, you can't go to the
yeah.
town and work
This-
anywhere else.
position was posted immediately, as Mr. Shive, I think, is getting ready to have this team together to interview. We've gotten, great response here, as we have for all of our recent positions, but
Great.
yeah.
You really good question. I've talked to a couple people, like, full disclosure, my neighborhood is
Mhm.
like one of the ones that's being pushed over.
Yeah,
Who is, and I've heard great things about the communication that they received, and also about like everyone's vibe is just really good, but who is the point person? Is it the the current principal? Is it?
for
For questions about, like the impact of redistricting and, panic, if it comes up, just fear.
people can feel free to email me
You
or
directly?
reach out to me.
Okay.
I'm sure the principals also are more than capable of answering questions.
Sure, yeah.
But
Just wasn't sure if there was a,
Yeah.
we like to do.
Yeah, and I mean, my last communication, we were just trying to make the point of it, we don't want to, have anybody in a full panic about anything at this point. We know what the redistricting, lines and boundaries are now, but and we also don't want to confuse anybody. We're gonna open next school year, right, under the current configuration, and then, we'll send out those notices, I would imagine by late September, and kind of kick off, I think once people then can see it on paper and, that may lead to some additional questions.
Yeah, and just strategizing, I think, especially for the kids who are in fifth grade,
Right.
is that there's a lot of, at least my own child who was like, I can't wait to go to school in that building. And I was like, or it might be in that building. And she was like, and then I realized maybe I need some guidance with how to talk to kids.
She can call Tom directly.
Yeah,
But I think, honestly, I feel like our kids our district is very unified. We're very resilient as a district. I think we can cope with things. But it would be helpful just to be able to say, like, if your kid's panicking, you can,
Mhm.
okay, you're up for that.
I am.
Thank you.
All right.
You're great with presence, so it's nice.
I mean, I may need to have to direct them to someone else, but they can certainly feel free to tell me. All right, well, last thing under superintendent's report is just our financial report. We're actually almost at the end of the fiscal year here, so this takes us through May of 2026. Ms. Baker has put together a memo and all backup information, and I will, it's kind of the same message that we've been given here, particularly the last few months where the picture is becoming clearer, but we are projecting to certainly be well within budgeted amounts while also covering the initial amount of surplus, which I think was $300,000 for the current fiscal year that was used from our fund balance. So I don't know if there are any questions for Mrs. Baker.
I just had a question, Maggie, just about revenue, because I know we've talked before about how our appropriate revenue doesn't necessarily come in on a particular schedule, and so I just noticed that in the memo, as like we're closing out our fiscal year in 2 weeks, that there's a decent gap in how much revenue we're supposed to have by the end of the year and how much we've received, and so I was wondering if you knew what the plan
They will book it.
for the rest of it, so it's just gonna like
It's
Here.
just a journal. We get the whole.
okay, I just, because going into the end of the fiscal year, like having to book that our expenses have outpaced our revenues by quite a bit.
Yes.
I didn't know if that was like a weird thing or.
Mrs. Baker assures me that we have never not received every
Okay.
penny that we are.
So is that
supposed to.
just kind of what normally happens? Like we just sort of do it and then we just get
It's
done?
normal in a financial statement.
Huh?
It should be moved on a monthly basis, but the town is in control of their town appropriation and they move it as they move it.
Okay,
Yeah, we've tried to be better this year at reporting out monthly, so you're seeing it more often as well, yeah.
it's just, I was surprised at the,
So that means it's been paid and just hasn't been.
No.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah, they do a journal entry
No.
over to our revenue right now.
They say they
So
know
it
it
just
needs to
hasn't
be at the end of the fiscal year.
Book entry, that's all. We
Just
receive
odd.
the whole
We do receive.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've had this discussion before, like legally, once it's our appropriation, it's as though it should be appropriated to us, but it hasn't been.
So
I think like previously we had discussed the fact that the town is like earning interest off of our appropriation, which was flagged as an issue by the school committee.
they've got our IT, I know, but their our interest.
no,
Yeah, I mean,
this
it's a
was more
substantial
of
amount
a,
of money.
we have a statutory obligation not to run a deficit, and I did not know the actual accounting rules when we are paying out payroll that is putting us technically on our books. If you were to look at our accounts right now in a deficit, if there is any risk to the district at any point when that happens, even if we are confident the money is coming, if we are booking out payroll, we are spending money. It is going out the door. We have spent it. It's not Maggie's encumbered it. Like people get paychecks, the money is gone. And we have not booked that. We actually have the revenue to cover that. I would not want to see that come up weirdly in an audit because, or something like that. That is why I'm asking the question, because I don't know. And I know that when we get to the end of the fiscal year, it goes crazy and then Maggie has to finish it and then there's budget and then she's immediately into the audit and it goes nuts. And it just, it's a red flag to
Oh,
me
yeah, that's-
that we have a very clear mandate that we are not supposed to do this and we are spending money that we technically don't have. And I just wanna be sure that Maggie
technically-
feels cool about that and it's not gonna be a problem.
I think technically because we still have our, our reserves. that we are probably not actually running.
Our reserve does not cover this gap.
I don't see it, sorry.
So we
But
have
they are actually paying our
32
bills,
million
correct?
in revenues.
Yeah, they are actually paying our. bills.
They're paying the payroll? Is that where the money, that's what I'm trying to understand.
They.
I'm not saying anyone's doing anything
Yeah.
bad. It just doesn't look awesome.
Yeah.
And that's always, we have to be just as concerned about what it looks like. And so when we have 32 million in revenues and 41 million in expenditures, like our $1.3 million of fund balance does not cover that. And we are,
I didn't know how much.
no,
it was.
no, I know. And we're doing, like, we pay out a big chunk at the end of the year because we don't run payroll, right? All,
Let me just give you a little
Sure.
background. So we don't hold any cash. In some school departments, they hold their own cash, or the town is moving cash over to them. to the
Okay.
checking account. Here in East Greenwich, the cash is all being managed by the town. It's in what they call pool cash. So all the cash is together.
okay.
So they are paying out all of those payrolls that run.
So do you book it in Munis and then they look at it and they send the money?
We create all the files to go
Yeah.
to the bank and they just approve it and release the funds to all the.
Okay.
That sounds a little-
of that.
Okay.
So these funds are commingled in the.
No,
No,
we don't have any of them, is what you're saying.
They're just mingled over there.
They're just sitting in a bank cash account together.
And the law doesn't say anything, Aubrey, about when,
Since it's our appropriation, I mean, I think we've talked about this before and like what we would potentially do to force them to give us the appropriation, especially because I think as Dr. Quinn has pointed out, like on several occasions, we are losing a ton of money by having them hold on to that money for the
so
entire.
why don't we take
fiscal
that
year.
forward?
I mean, I think
Well, I think that's
it's not
another
on the agenda.
discussion.
But definitely something, you know, that I know you've talked about before and that we could continue to try to talk to the town about or.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be weird about it. It's just as we've gotten these memos on a monthly basis, the number has been a little bit off, but we're going through the year. We're booking things. It's weird. But we have 2 weeks left in our fiscal year, and all of a sudden the gap is bigger than it's been all year long. And my question was solely like, does that get dumped in a week so that it doesn't look weird, like we have run a deficit because we have to close out our books in 2 weeks
Hmm.
and there is a $10 million problem. So, but that's not a problem, is what you're saying. So that's fine.
And is what Maggie described, that it's different districts do different things, but the law seems like it says something more definitive?
It's breaking.
Is that just that this is,
Different districts do different things. I do think this is a bit unusual. I don't know what, Tom, if this has been your experience.
So, and I've had these discussions with Mr. Nana, my previous district, and again, every district I think does a little different, but we would get monthly 1/12 of the appropriate, and just so at least we knew what we were spending against.
So some districts do it like that. Some districts get it all. Here's your appropriation. Like, this is it. I find this to be, I think if you were to do a survey, this would be unique, in my experience. Is it against the law? I don't know. Is it like in the spirit of how I think the law reads, that we get an appropriation and like it's your appropriation? No, I don't think it's really in the spirit of the law, but I also know that there's like a history of potentially like deciding to combine departments for fiscal purposes.
so is it in the town charter? Do we know? Or we don't know?
I don't think there's anything like that. And I think, like Aubrey says, it's not really in the spirit. Because if what Maggie's saying is the money doesn't live somewhere that Maggie controls. Maggie is saying all our expenses and then that's going to the town and they're physically paying money. They hold the money, they pay the bills. It's sort of like you go to your parents and you're like, I told these 5 people I would give them $5 and then your mom sends the money.
I mean, if you look back at all our audited financial statements and you look at the town appropriation budget to actual, and Gene could attest to this, he's gone back.
Yeah.
a year, I don't know, 80s. We've
1800.
always received our appropriation.
Yeah,
So I
Yeah,
just want to be clear
Yeah,
that.
there's no allegation that they're like not giving.
No.
us.
It's making an allegation, but it's,
The
That's
spirit
not
of
what I
the
was saying.
law is really different
Yeah.
than I think this.
But and theoretically, we do have, like, the money exists, it is.
yes, I'm not saying that the town has spent it all and now we're not gonna.
So
No, no,
like,
no.
the deficit,
Nothing-
like running a deficit piece is
but
like.
you know, the only thing is I'm struck.
It was
ev-
more like an accounting weirdness.
Yeah.
This was the first time because Tom has Maggie to prepare these memos, which we were first getting the sheets. Now
Right.
we're getting them monthly, that we see the difference.
Watching it go, yeah.
I was surprised 2 weeks out from the end of the fiscal year that there was a big gap and I was just, it was my own curiosity
No, that
about
makes
like
sense.
how that gets closed by the 30th, so it never looks like
Since
we are
almost
running a
eight,
deficit.
But we always-
That was it.
It's a totally different
Yeah,
thing.
that
than
was,
you were
I just
asking.
want to be very clear. I
No,
don't
and
think we're
it,
gonna
you know,
be that.
it always comes up, the town councilors will be the first ones to tell you, well, you know, we just appropriate the money, you decide how you're gonna spend it. Which literally means we could, you know, render a budget that says we need X amount to spend on A, B, and C, and then when the money's appropriated, we could say, well, change of plan, we're gonna spend it on X, Y, Z, and we're totally within our bounds because they don't have any say over, you know, how that money is allocated. So this is a, this this inhibits our freedom to operate at some level, I think.
And let me just add.
As well as putting us potentially, you know, at least on paper, in a structural.
Deficit is that, you know, we're reporting on a quarterly basis to municipal finance on top of that with projections. So
Yeah.
they are seeing what, you know, and they question anything that is on there, so. They can
It's
see
a
if
control
there's any-
mechanism. It's like saying, you know, well, we agreed on a $5 allowance, but tell me what you're gonna spend it on first before I, you know, give you your weekly $5.
That's just not what I was asking. I was,
We know,
the big number.
we got it. It was, that's not at all what Allison was.
Yeah. Jean,
No, I
pointing
know,
out,
she
but
was talking about the
it's
deficit. I
making
understand.
a separate point.
Saw an opening.
I just wanted to say that one of the things I've learned in, 8 years doing this is that the town manager and the town finance director have a tremendous amount of leeway in the way they, in the nuts and bolts of exactly how they manage the finances. And there's a concept that, oh, there's a right way to do it, and all the finance directors do it that way. They're all different. I went back 35 years. I have data on all 10 previous finance directors. So I have the
Of course
receipts.
you do. And, okay, so there's a lot of discretion.
There is tremendous, yes, and
Okay.
it's not questioned, no one questions it.
Well, apparently you just did.
I'm not questioning it. I'm saying
No,
that's how it is.
Sorry, that was really supposed to be an easy question on top.
Yeah, but when you don't get the money and then you get the comments, well, you know, your budget and actual projections are always way off and stuff like that. I mean, this is a control mechanism. Let's call it out for what it is. It's wrong. I
Well, I mean,
think
that's
maybe you
why I asked.
send a letter to Bombastic Bushkin on the other side and see what they'll say.
Why must we always have the names?
That was Johnny Carson's
Okay.
lawyer.
It's not on the.
No, the
The
reason
agenda.
that I was asking, obviously, is because we do tend to have this happen at the end of the fiscal year. If things don't look like they match, we often get questions. And this was a big
Yep.
non-matcher there, which is why I asked.
And that's a really good point, and we know it's fine, it's gonna be fine, it's not really, like. doesn't
But it's
hold up all the
also,
time,
the
but-
question has been asked now, we are all aware
Yeah,
that
now
this
it's
looks
out
like
there,
this,
yeah.
our finance director's been like, this is how it works, it's gonna be done. Then we can look in 2 weeks and
And it's,
see
and
that it is and be fine.
it's done the same way, this is,
Yeah, that's a methodology.
yeah.
Okay.
Correct. I asked that question early on, so.
But I did still think it was important to do the monthly reports so that we just stay on top of it. Absolutely. You're not seeing,
To us, because I think the more we break it down into these bits, we're able to drill down and see actually how the process works. And it has made it much easier with the level of detail we had in the budget and having the ability to talk to Ms. Baker about these different things and be able to see these snapshots for us to actually understand how the decisions are made, how the money moves around, and it helps us be part of that decision making when we are doing the budget or when you come and ask for us to move things or change. Understanding exactly how the mechanics of it is, I think, has been very helpful to me. I assume it's helpful to
And
my
the audited
colleagues here.
financial statements you'll see is a transfer from the town coming over.
Yep.
In 100%, so, you know, the
Got
books
it.
are saying one thing, but 100% is absolutely.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. Any other questions on anything from the superintendent's report?
Thank you.
Move on to
it's a great segue into our first action
action
item.
item. Yes, it is actually. Fantastic segue. All right, so all this, I'm gonna put motions on the table, then if we want to discuss, we can discuss. Because there will be some. So the first would be approval of a revised fiscal year 27 school department budget. I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Claire, second by Jean. discussion, Dr. Taylor.
What, we would not want to have a budget discussion without a presentation. I promise.
No.
I promise it'll be brief, but I'm gonna come over here to make it a little easier for me. We have a
Claire.
lot of discussion there
Okay.
about budget, and you did approve a fiscal year, 2027 budget, back in April. That was then forwarded to the town. So I'll go through all the details. And I think everybody knows, we've talked about, the town council in their final approved budget, did, approve our full request, which was a 4% increase. We did have some adjustments on, the state aid side of things, and so that's adjusted both revenue and expenditures a little bit. And just even a little bit of an adjustment means I have to bring a budget back to you too. So that's why we are here this evening. So, okay, and then a couple of sides. Ms. Baker is going to take one toward the end, and Ms. Norvalucci is also going to take slide, and Mr. Mercaccio has been a big part of these conversations as well. You'll answer any questions, but this first slide is the budget that you approved back on April 7th. So again, this was no changes from what you saw and approved on April 7th after much discussion and deliberation that we went through leading up to that. But everything there, from the town appropriation to the state aid number, to any other revenue line items, and what the reasons why we landed on those amounts, is that you're seeing is the same budget that you approved back on April 7th, including the expenditures, or what we proposing for expenditures. So since that time, leading up to where we are tonight, we know a few things have happened. First is that the town has gone through its process. They did land on a final tax levy and in-town budget, but within that, there were no changes to what you had approved back in April 7th for town appropriation, which we asked for from the town. So again, I want to thank everyone on the town side and town council for their collaborative efforts there, and realizing the fiscal situation that we were in, needing every dollar of revenue possible. We did have some changes on the state aid side, as I mentioned. So it's a total of $34,511 favorable. So in that, it's about $9,000 and change of additional state aid, just when they went through all of the various changes in the General Assembly and made adjustments. Through one of the adjustments, we ended up $9,000 more favorable. The rest of the $34,511 figure would be that form of that transportation offset, which is another amount of aid that comes to us, but it's more going to help on our expenditure side as we are paying our transportation bills, right? Another one of their categories. But again, with all of that total, we're going to have some adjustments in our lines that we'll get to. But the other thing that I wanted to do tonight was to circle back to, and I know the committee is aware, I've been keeping you updated. But one change from that budget that you approved back on April 7th is we had some discussion, and we're assuming that we were going to go forward with a change in the prescription drug plan that the Rhode Island Local Trust was offering. At the end of the day, we did not move forward with that plan. And so it means we have to go with the current trust plan, which was about a 16% overall increase in our healthcare costs. Some good news on that end is that around the time that we left that conversation on April 7th, as we were trying to project what that amount would be if we didn't go with the trust changes, I think we were looking at about $165,000 figure. So the first thing that Mrs. Baker did for us was adjust based on, we've had also a lot of personnel changes that we know of since then, additional retirements and different things happening. So that current number is now sits at that $140,000 gap, if you will. Okay, with the personnel adjustments, known personnel adjustments we've been able to make. Then factoring in that, favorable $34,511 figure from the final General Assembly approved budget, that brings us to that gap of $105,489 between revenues and expenditures. So just significant enough where I would be more comfortable. At least I am going to ask you to vote here on some final budget numbers. I just want you to know what our plan would be for closing that gap. So with that, I'm going to start that conversation with through our budget deliberations, and this slide is taken directly from the March 31st budget presentation. So that was the last one leading up to that final vote that you took on April 7th. And we had questions throughout the deliberations, so we tried to just kind of put some scenarios together with, okay, well, what's going to happen after June 1st if somehow the town appropriation or state aid come back less favorable. And so we tried to work some scenarios together for you. So I mean, all of these things could certainly be in play. However, the changes I'm going to propose are on this slide. Because the one thing that we have the luxury of now from when we were back on April 7th is, again, we've had additional things happen with personnel that we know with changes. So two additional personnel adjustments will help us close this gap, and that would be my recommendation, to not have to go to some of these other things on this slide and dipping into reducing student extracurricular experiences, and I need to do that at this point, just as we're getting to wrap up the school year and have changes that nobody's anticipating for the start of next school year. If we have other feasible options, my recommendation would be here. So one of the things that we do know now that we didn't know back on April 7th is we have a 1-year leave request next year from a district physical education health teacher. And we've done a lot of review of what schedules would need to look like, and make sure we have coverage all the way through for things like adaptive physical education. And we believe that if we could not fill 0.6 of that position, so we would essentially be filling 0.4 of it. And just again, with our current physical education health staff in that 0.4 of this leave position, we could leave 0.6 of it unfilled and still meet all of our needs in the schedule and student needs for adaptive physical education. And then I am going to also recommend so on the paraeducator RBT side of things, when we ended our budget discussions on April 7th in the budget that you approved, there were some elimination of positions there based on retirements and other things that we knew. And essentially, we were not filling 4 positions. So we were taking that number from 85 total positions down to 81. I would be recommending that we go for take 1 more position there. So we'd be now moving to 80 total positions. And as I've mentioned, we've had our job placement processes on both the teacher and paraeducator side. Everyone who current employees who wants a job has a job in either of those unions. And on the paraeducator side, we still have a number of positions that are unfilled in the district. And we know on the RBT side of things, we end up with a number of positions unfilled that Mr. Marcarcio then has to go out to agencies for. He feels confident that there are a couple of options that we could explore to just leave one of those positions unfilled. That way, again, deals with 80 total positions, which we think is more than adequate for our needs next year. Last thing that I will include there, I have had conversations on both of those with the leadership of both collective bargaining units. So with all of that, that would take us to this next slide. It looks similar to that slide from April 7th and that budget you approved, but this would be taking all of those adjustments into account, and this would now be the budget that we'd be asking you to approve tonight. I'm going to have Mr. Baker just walk us through a few things there.
Can we just go back to the original slide, the one that we presented? Keep going.
Yeah.
Yep, here. So I just want to point out, if you look at the personnel salary line, the 29,495,000, just remember these numbers, and 10,890,000, and then the other one. So this is how we just walk you through the numbers. So that slide that Dr. Kenworthy just showed you with the potential of reducing those positions, that is now hitting that salary line to 29,422. And then, of course, the benefit line is going up because we had to add back 140,000 to it, and then subtract out the benefit savings from the 2 potential positions that we might reduce.
Okay.
And then if you look at the operating expense line on the purchase service, the last one, 11,636,000, that has $25,000 reduced from it from the extra offset from the state aid. So increase the revenue on the state aid by the 9,000, excuse me, wish it was 9 million.
I was like,
And then, that'd be nice, and then reduce the salaries and increase the benefits and offset purchase services with the transportation piece of it to create a balanced budget for FY 27.
Thank you. And so last thing, just so again, you know, when you voted on the budget on April 7th, we tried to provide as full of a picture as we could for our federal grant programs. And as we sit here now, June 16th, we actually have our allocations for next year. There's a slight gap, but not as bad as you know it could have been. So Ms. Norvolucci is going to walk us through how we
He told you guys all of what I was gonna say.
We'll
But we got our allocation as the CTE last 2 weeks ago and everything else in May. We are down by about $36,000 total. We expected it to be worse, and as we are writing our grants and narratives and activities, we're just accounting for that loss in our funds.
and just so you have the total picture
I'm just looking.
of everything there
So we got
on
lesson
the
part
budget
B,
side.
the title two,
So
and
again, that-
CPE were down.
Brings us back to this slide here, that has the new updated budget
No, title
numbers.
two and CPE,
And IDA 16,000.
yeah. Is that just an enrollment thing? But just enrollment based, yeah.
Yeah. But all that, so this again would be the updated budget that would be out. It for me.
Anybody have any questions about the revisions? Yes, Jean.
Not so much a question, but a comment. That I don't think it's generally appreciated, but the school department has to finalize their budget well ahead of the town departments and in the state budget and it's the nature of these things that they change over time. You get better information, particularly as you're moving into a new year. Around the end of the year, you're going to pick up a lot of information that you wish you had in April when you had to do that budget. In no way does that mean you don't know what you're doing, putting that budget together. I can't be too emphatic about that. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the problem, right? You just don't know.
I mean, even $9,000 different, it changed the overall revenue picture. We would have had to have brought, you know, a budget back.
Right, and something else that is not appreciated, hardly appreciated by anyone, is that because the individual line items, you know, they tend to look at those and say, oh, this one was way off. You made a mistake. You don't know how to budget. Actually, that's a consequence of this rolling acquisition of information, that as we get better information, those numbers will change. And certain numbers will be revealed to be probably over budgeted and others will appear to be under budgeted. And we didn't know that. We couldn't know that when the budget was put together. But these adjustments come in as you go through the year. And because of the active management of those line items, that actually reduces the variability in the bottom line. If those line items are independent, the standard deviation of the budget variance would be $700,000. The right number is 400,000. And it's because of these negative correlations. You know, when one thing is seen to be coming in under budget, something else is adjusted that looks like it's coming in over budget. Money is moved around. That's a negative correlation. So there's absolutely no truth to the fact. I mean, you hear a lot of people on the school side don't know how to budget. That's nonsense. That's total nonsense.
And also, I mean, so the person who's going to go on leave, so that's information you didn't know,
Right, we
right?
did not know.
And the deadline for notifying us about leaves is June 1, is that what it is?
There's a few different kinds of leaves,
Okay.
you know, without disclosing any of this particular leave, there is technically no deadline.
Right.
If outside of, Sergeant Hicks will be if there is a March 1st.
But to Jane's point, that's a whole other
Yeah,
class
it's
of information that we don't have, that we could not have really.
Our enrollment.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but I appreciate that. I mean, there are easier ways for you to adjust the budget. When you see that we needed another $105,000, there are easier ways to do it. I appreciate going back through all of these numbers, taking all of the new information we have since we voted on this, working it in there, because I'm sure everybody noticed where we did not take that $105,000 from. So, no, honestly, I mean, when we have deadlines, we have to vote on these things. It takes a lot more time to go through and adjust all of the different places that you adjust with all of the new information in order to present this revised budget to us than just saying we have $105,000 gap and we need to fill it. So vote to put this money in the budget. That would be not, sometimes there is no other choice, but I appreciate the fact that you went back and did all of this work. for this.
Yes, and I think this was very well done.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think again, you lay out as many options as you can think of, and you try to find, which one is the least painful, which one makes the most sense in the environment. And that, my way of thinking, that is the best anybody can do. So thank you.
And thank you for breaking it down step by step for us so that we fully understand.
Well, you had to run different staffing models to get to your decision, so that's that's.
But we could have also just gotten
Smart,
the
Yeah.
new,
but you didn't just lop off a
So,
line item
appreciate the
arbitrarily.
explanation.
Showing your work. That's who we are.
Showed your work.
Well, are there any other questions or comments about the,
I'd like to give a bluebird to this budget
okay,
sticker for showing your
little
work,
sticker,
Yeah.
okay.
right on the upper right.
Well, we have a motion to approve on the table, so I would go ahead and ask all those in favor of approving this revised fiscal year 2027 budget. Show of hands, please. Budget is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody, for that.
Thank you.
Next, I would entertain a motion to approve an employment contract template for our human resources coordinator. Anyone? Then moved by Jean, seconded by Claire. Does anyone have any comments or questions about the template was provided? That's all right. All those in favor of approving the template, show of hands, please. Thank you very much. I'll do my notes here.
Really working exactly how your
Yes.
policy was aimed at now, since we don't even know like who
Yep.
that person is.
Yeah,
They
nope,
haven't been
yeah,
appointed.
nope.
Now you did
You
the.
know nothing.
And this
You know
new
Hopefully- Hopefully you will know soon.
Yeah, very exciting.
So next we have the actual that we discussed at our last meeting, moving forward with a elementary staffing analysis. Tonight we have the contract. So I would entertain a motion to approve a contract for elementary staffing analysis for district management group in the amount of $90,000. So moved by Tim, seconded by Jean. Any discussion? Any questions? All those in favor, show of hands, please. Thank you very much. All right, making sure I'm checking off all the boxes here. Next, we have a motion to approve the contract for the staff orientation keynote speaker, Pam Garamond, in the amount of $6,900.
And just as a note, this person has been designated as a sole source.
Sole source.
Because since we're over the threshold, otherwise we would need to go out to bid, but
Yep.
because they have a certain expertise, we have designated them as a sole. source.
Thank you for that, Aubrey. Do I have a motion? So moved by Jean. Second. Second by Claire. Any further questions or comments?
So may I ask, so Ozzy, I assume, and you've got folks sitting next to you, so this is what the educators themselves think will add a lot of value? I mean, this was a collaborative decision to get this person. It's not my cup of tea, kind of the pop psychology thing, but this is what the educators want.
Educators not necessarily talked about this keynote speaker, but there
Right.
was a conversation about school climate and staff morale.
Right.
And this leads to the videos we hope that contribute to that improvement of the
Right.
school climate.
Well, that's the thing. So she comes in and she does a session and then you get weekly videos, right?
Yes,
For the staff, yes.
There are some different options of things she could do, and that's the one we chose.
But it's been socialized. Well, it's
Yeah,
gonna,
with the
it's gonna
professional
take,
staff.
yeah.
It's a response to a.
Yeah, that's what I mean, really. I didn't mean it like it's a response to a perceived need. So, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But there is a motion on the table. Does anyone else have a comment or a question? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the contract, show of hands, please. Thank you. Next, I'd entertain a motion to approve our food services contract with Aramark the coming school year. So moved by Jean, second by Claire.
Can I
Any
just
dis-
mention something?
Yes.
very quickly? So I have already sort of socialized this with Allison and Tom, sorry, I didn't mean to call you by your first name, but I'm.
It's really okay.
Everything,
I
but,
really didn't think about it.
At the last Barrington School Committee meeting, they mentioned that they actually, there was a vote to go out to RFP for a consultant for their food services in the schools. And I immediately, so I know you think I talk about them at your meetings, but I immediately was like, actually, East Greenwich had this idea like a year ago for you guys. Do you think you'd want to split it with them? And they were like 100%, if they want to do it with us, like, let's do it. So that's not on the agenda tonight, but I think it's close enough to be here, and we had talked about putting it on the next agenda.
Yep.
They're in the same boat, they have to go, with who they had with Chartwell's for another year. So I think this would be, for the next school year for both of you, but they were like very excited that you might want to partner with them, and I said that you all had this idea first, so just wanted to throw that out there.
We did.
That was a close call because you were bringing up Barrington again and I was like, enough.
I see him rolling his eyes.
But you were talking about, you were saying.
Can I talk about you with them too?
So that means a lot.
Yes, well,
So, I mean, one of the complaints you hear a lot is that, well, there are too many school districts in Rhode Island that should all be consolidated into one, maybe, and this is a good example of how we can, reduce costs by, we all need to do the same things as far as feeding students pretty much. And, it makes sense.
So are you suggesting we should have more of a joint venture with Barrington going forward?
I think so.
No, on lots of things.
Food services.
Your interests overlap, and this
Yes.
happened to be one where they brought up something that I
Yeah.
knew you
that we
had
have tried to do.
expressed interest in, like, very
Yeah.
specifically previously, so I felt comfortable to say, hey, I actually think East Greenwich might be interested in this too.
to, as a state, because they're small. And each of our districts doesn't tend to be huge. School districts tend to get lumped into one big basket. We see that happen legislatively. We see it happen at the state house. I think representatives for public school districts tend to be individuals, like within the state. And I think there is not always a great way. So I appreciate Aubrey like being a catalyst for this note, because we don't tend to have enough good connections amongst school districts that may be similarly situated with each other on particular items and maybe not as situated with other districts. And I'm just saying, oh, East Greenwich and Barrington, I think a lot of times we're not, like when it comes to enrollment, but I think this is one of those instances where we may be in a different position per what we are looking for in our food service and what our communities are looking for, where this partnership might be a good idea. And it is a way to test that out, because I think, I say this all the time, it's not an accident, like a similarly situated district to us is Portsmouth, in size and community. And I think we need to try to look for more opportunities where we can partner with, because I think we do get lumped into like a bucket, like everybody has to have a food, or everybody has to have buses, and we don't have a really organized way as a school committee to like reach out to other school committees making similar decisions in districts that may be in a similar position to ours, but that might not be true of like most districts. And so that it doesn't get brought up. And I think this is a way to be proactive in that respect.
We
So
really try, and I usually, probably Allison and Tom know this more than everybody else, but even like, there's a new special ed law that is going to go into effect on July 1st. And so we're like in our office getting all of our special ed directors together and like getting on a Zoom. And so we do in our office try to do that to, whether there's new information or like something everybody might be interested in. I think we we do try to make a conscious effort to do that
That's a
because
real
we think
value
that
add.
it'll save everybody money and also I think just collaboration is a good thing.
Yeah.
So I will continue to look
No,
for
it's great. It's a big
opportunities.
value. It's a big value
Mhm.
add. Thank you. Absolutely.
There is,
for
a-
now.
Sorry,
there is
really
a
slow
motion on the
down.
table for
Slower.
armor goods, and just to be clear, this is a 1 year.
Yes.
Contract.
Roll over.
So I wanted to make sure we brought that up, Tim, just.
So Maggie, have they done anything innovative over the past year, Aramark?
They did bring in that, a scratch cooking chef at the high school.
Yeah.
They did.
Which
And
is,
how's that going?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
are getting a lot of positive reviews.
Mhm.
Of
Yeah,
Which-
she's made a lot of changes this year.
Yep.
And the food that's being served.
Okay.
and that came from the initial work we did
Yeah.
like over a year ago, where we put out surveys and Aramark was doing that in the buildings and they were doing taste testing. And one of our goals was to get more sales in the high school and keep
Correct.
kids at school for lunch in the high school, like part of doing the cafeteria and doing that. So that came directly out of the little bit of work we were able to do. So glad to hear that it's going.
So is there more take on kale and carrots and probiotics and prebiotics?
Stay with more fresher food instead of
Yes.
the.
Actually, I thought you said cheese.
I have one-
Some of the, like, different variations of food that
That were very creative in terms
No,
of
but-
how they're putting plates together,
Good.
vegetables and hummus and making it, and they're actively soliciting feedback for their
student feedback.
students, right, as, and they're.
That was the
giving
one
them
thing we-
tests.
And are the students good stewards of their health and well-being, you think?
Oh, that's why we eat
That's
them.
what Ironmark has a lot of trouble with sales at the high school, that's why we're
Yes.
focusing on the high school. Cole, they love the food,
Yep.
here, they love the food, they don't really can't put their hand on it, but,
Mhm.
the high school, the students.
Is that the DoorDash, is that the DoorDash effect, even though you say? it?
No, it's not the door. I think a lot of it is they bring
Yep.
some of their protein shakes and
Yep.
some of them come in with some beautiful bento boxes
Mm.
that have been laid out for them and yeah. And some of these
I like
kids
it.
look at home.
Oh.
It is amazing. I look at what they're bringing.
Be clear. I
They don't need that cafeteria.
I don't
Yeah, so.
I know the
it's a
protein
combination
shake
that I
scene
can say
in
it's
White
been
Lotus,
out.
Thailand.
Yeah.
Um,
But they've done a good job of changing things around this year.
one question that maybe I'm forgetting, but in past years, so I just noticed that there's that pretty elaborate spreadsheet you have to fill out, and then there's the letter
Mhm.
compliance with the ride person for nutrition. Do you do that every year? You have to do that every year?
Be good.
Okay.
Mhm.
And just even if it's anecdotal, and Aubrey, if you know, what's Ride's attitude these days towards nutrition and all that? I mean, are they pushing?
Oh,
Yeah, the chart rules is not going on to the MPA, correct?
And that's where Barrington one
That
is.
is, yes, who
And
clearly.
they're not having a good experience.
We got some feedback from their student representative that they asked him, like, what do you think about the food? And he was like, yeah, I think kids think it's okay, but like, there could be more salads and like healthier food. And so I guess similar feedback. This poor kid, it was like his first meeting and they were like, what do you think about the food? Yeah. And so he offered that he thought students generally like the food, but that there could be more healthy options, including like more variations on salad.
No, I'm just curious because I mean, the state has a hard job because there are lots of areas where getting meals to kids every day with regularity, under the law and under, the right thing to do is that's
Right.
problem number one. Problem number two is, what's the quality of that food? What's the nature of it and stuff like
And
that. So
as all.
I just don't know how much attention they pay to the changing face of nutrition and what's good for us.
I mean, in this particular case, Monique, she is paying attention to it as well as the boss above her.
Mhm.
Because he was on all these working group meetings with
Uh-huh.
us. He's very knowledgeable in the food industry.
Yes.
He's been in the industry for a very long time. People have to remember one thing, the cost of food is tremendous.
Is so.
And so that is,
now.
and they have a bottom line of.
Yep.
Right, of profit that they need to make, so that also comes into consideration always.
Mhm.
Here we have a guarantee, Charles doesn't always give a guarantee
Mhm.
to districts. We have a guarantee in this contract of $20,000. So they have to meet that. The first year when we went out, after we went to bid, they They bid a $35,000 profit and guarantee. They did not make it.
No,
And so what happened is they were on the hook for $70,000. They had to pay the district $35,000 and close their year out with another $35,000.
Hmm.
So they've taken a hard look at their business here in year 2 and 3, so.
Thank you for that.
Just to add, on, the whole, I know that the high school made some really big changes, and I've noticed in my own quiet way of watching the balance of everybody's meal go down in a nice way. And I just have been hearing really nice things about COLA, specifically the individuals who are there. And it's always funny because it's like, is it the company? Is it is it just like one miracle person? Is it 6 miracle people? You know, but I mean the movement has been moving, and the I guess like intellectual and emotional investment of people who are providing the
Yes.
food is really.
But you guys last year, didn't you do mystery shopping? You went in and you did great.
yeah, and
Oh,
the thing is,
You didn't do that this year?
It wasn't like a
No,
sting
we-
operation. It was just for
No.
like
I know, but it's a good thing
I
to
would-
do. I mean,
what I would say
I
is,
don't have any primary knowledge. I probably should, but.
no, I was gonna say, with the superintendent's permission, I would encourage everybody at the table to arrange, maybe with the principals at schools, to go have lunch. Like, you can go a little bit before the students are having lunch, so you're not like disruptive or weird. And you can go and eat the food and see what you think.
And I have eaten it, but any time I've been in schools, I try to eat lunch there. I've eaten at each of our schools multiple times
Yeah.
throughout the year. The other thing I was gonna point out, we haven't discussed, I think everybody realizes it, but we just haven't, you know, landed on this. You know, our elementary schools are limited with the kid, but the new buildings will have state of the art and brand new equipment in those elementary schools even, so it'll be interesting to see if you know, that can lead to some.
That's a good point.
Improvements there,
The
yeah.
equipment does,
Yeah.
equal what they're cooking at.
But they're.
I'm just curious, what's an example of something that they'll make in the new schools that they can't?
Well, they
make?
might have an oven that's not.
Yeah, and maybe closer to what, I mean,
A better
yeah, the
oven.
quality at the high school and middle school,
So just closer.
yeah, I
Yeah.
would say, I mean, I've never, you know,
Yeah.
had a bad experience there. The elementary, it's not, again, it's just they're limited with the equipment they have and the space they have as to what they can make.
even the presentation. I mean, there was no
Mhm.
dishwasher, right? Like
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
in our-
can't have a dishwasher.
Like, we
Yeah,
couldn't
so, like-
have a policy where if we were using reusables, like trays and cutlery and things like that,
Ramp
because
it
we
up.
didn't have a way to get it clean.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
Hannaford, it's like, is it a cafeteria? Is it a assembly hall? Is it a
I think that's.
storage
All of our
facility?
elements.
But you also have to
Yeah.
remember,
The rehearsals.
schools being built at a time where it was perfectly acceptable that you get your hot lunch and you'd walk up to like this little window and they would just hand you a tray, you'd go sit down and eat it. And that the expectations now are very different for school lunch than what they were when these facilities were.
And it was so
So,
much better when it was universal free lunch.
That
See
is
that it
yes.
was
Number one thing.
and
100%.
you know, we are always looking, and I know that our particular state representatives really advocate for this, are trying to push for that, for free breakfast and lunch. And so I just wanted to be that part of us looking at different providers too, is looking at how we as a district could get closer to making that something that maybe we could provide that student, because we do know from our own experience during COVID that when everybody could get free lunch, so many more students got lunch at school at the lunch program than when it's not that. Like, we had so much more, they call it uptake, but we just had,
Engagement.
yeah, no, people just,
Yeah.
that's what people did. So I know there's a thought like, well, free lunch benefits certain types of students and maybe our students certainly, no, like many more students at all levels ate lunch at school with the provided lunch when it was available for free. So, you know, we're always looking for ways to improve all the experiences for our students. So,
And it's
then
not only
we
about
just
money,
fix them.
it's about friction. It's about
Yeah.
being able to,
That all means,
yeah, and about like, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to think, do I have money in my account? Am I on lunch kit? Like,
and
it's like,
that is,
go right in.
yep.
Okay, I think the majority of states now provide
Mm-hmm.
free universal breakfast and lunch.
They
Yes.
can't leave, the little kids can't leave.
But just,
You don't-
and like, if we can, and part of that too is if there's more uptake in the elementary schools, like if we have different programs for the high school that allow us to like build the program, then it could support that at a lower level at, you know, lots of things. But we're looking at all this. I love that Aubrey like talked to Barrington about us because that's just more options. It's not a slight on Aramark.
No,
Again, this is a 1-year contract. Now that Chartwell's is on an MPA, you could switch to Chartwell's. Like that's going to be an option for all districts because now without having to do the bidding process, because that's what the MPA lets you do. So options keep opening up and the food service provider we have keeps trying to improve every year. So we've talked about it a lot for a long time, but it is constantly improving. It's something we're always continuing to work on. And this is just more of that. With that said, we have, if no one has any other questions or comments about this particular contract, we have a motion on the table. And so I would ask anyone for a show of hands to approve the food services contract with Aramark. Excellent, thank you. And then our last action item is entertain a motion to approve an EGEA teacher memorandum of agreement for a math intern in this position. Maybe can. So I would entertain a motion. So moved by Claire, second by Jean. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Four. All right, that's all of our action items for tonight. Next we have our section on policies. We have 2 policies that are for first read tonight. So just to be clear again, so we had a big policy discussion last time. Every policy has to come before us for at least 2 reads before we can vote on them and make them actual district policy. So our first reads tonight are just for discussion, just to have them out there. Policy 8500, use of e-bikes and motorized mobility devices, and policy 7215, evaluation of instructional program recommended for repeal. So that's a repeal first read. And then we have 2 policies up for second read, which means we could vote on them tonight if we choose. Policy 1500 on school climate and policy 7600, responsible use of artificial intelligence revision. So I will go ahead and turn this over to Tim, if you had anything you'd like to tell us about the first read policies. I know it's all in your packet, so just like a quick introduction since you're new.
Yeah, sure. You know, I think the e-bike one, we're really just trying to get ahead of what is becoming, you know, around the country a real issue. So, you know, in my old town where my kids went to school in New Jersey, a middle school student was killed on an e-bike crossing an intersection. It was a Saturday, but he was going to a school sports event and stuff like that. But so I mean that hit me personally. But you know, when we went in and looked, you know, this is a real issue around the country. These things, you know, move quite rapidly, and kids often treat them as bicycles that go fast, as opposed to, you know, so the executive function isn't always there. And I think they're a real danger. So, you know, we looked at other policies nationally, and we sent this to Aubrey and stuff, and correct me if I'm wrong, Aubrey, but I mean, the state basically has come out with some e-bike regulations, which really are just extensions of regular bicycles, more or less, with restrictions on speed. They have these classes of bikes. One goes up to 20, one goes up to 28 miles per hour and stuff like that, but they treat them the same, which makes sense. But you know, so these things go quite fast. And then the other issue is around the batteries, which we addressed there too, because, you know, a lithium battery or a defective battery that's leaking, sitting out in the hot sun, or kids bringing these things in school. So anyway, you can have a look at that. That's something we need. And then the other one is just an ancient policy that's on our hit list because it's undated. It's been superseded by our curriculum policy. It's a little presumptuous about telling superintendent, the assistant superintendent, what their job description is. So anyway, we just think that's something to repeal. As a matter of fact, we should have probably repealed it 2 years ago when we passed the curriculum. And then school climate is back for second read, and minor wordsmithing. The big thing, which you know, again, Dr. Kenworthy and Ms. Norbelucci looked at quite carefully, was flipping this. I think it's a really beneficial change. which is to drive the responsibility and the monitoring of this down to the school improvement teams and making part of the school improvement plans for each building. So that's a great way to put more heft and more actionability around this. So most of those changes that are in yellow markup and stuff like that are really just to reflect that change in how we would operationalize this. And I think that makes a lot of sense. The arguments for the policy, again, this is, something that we need to have in place. Lots of places, again, around the country do. It's a kind of a support and a scaffold for our harassment and bias and discrimination policies. So I think it's very important in that sense. And then the other one, the artificial intelligence, again, we've worked with our administrators and then, through them with our educators and stuff. So what you see in that policy is some updated, definitions about AI. We said we would revisit this policy every year because the field is changing so fast. And I think that one significant change in here is something that's on page 2, which is, again, stuff that we're already doing at the high school, but we just wanted to commit at the level of policy, which is that there's a responsibility for the schools to give kids a good AI hygiene and, again, kind of problem solving skills that are specific to this kind of technology. So where you see, through multidisciplinary learning through different classes and different experiences at the high school, we should be, inculcating some kind of foundational AI literacy. So that's what's described in the policy. I think it's good. Again, it's something that's organic. We'll go back to it, when circumstances demand. But again, Ozzy did some great work on this, which we appreciate. So
yeah. All right. So does anyone have any specific questions or concerns or recommended revisions or changes to either of the policies that are here for second read? Policy 1500 or 7600?
can I just add to that?
Yes.
I do think, we made again, this is the policy committee, so it's advisory in nature, but we did say that it made a lot of sense if we could get the school climate policy across the goal line by the end of the year, so that then the educators have some time going into the next academic year to, really give that a proper launch and stuff like that. And again, I think we've had good input into it so far and stuff. So I think that has some timeliness to it. And the same with AI, because if we really want to make sure we're doing everything to provide AI literacy, this is a good time to do it. But it's your decision.
It's just revisions of an existing policy.
Yeah. No, I just made sure that no one had any specific comments or concerns about any provisions of this policy, because if not, then I would entertain a motion to approve policy 1500 school climate and policy 7600 responsible use of artificial intelligence. So moved by Tim, seconded by Will. Any further discussion on either? All those in favor of approving those two policies? Great. They are.
Thank you.
Our last business item.
Oh, the other ones are just a first.
Yep, they're just a
They were
first
feeling
read.
also a first.
Yep. We look at everything
do it.
twice.
Yeah, you have it pretty.
So if you have any comments or concerns about either of those, please communicate those to Tim so they can be incorporated before they go onto our agenda for a second read and we can discuss them.
Like when the policy.
They're the policy and policy making.
Mhm.
There's a whole way of doing
policy.
It is fair.
it.
You should come sometime.
I can't wake up there.
Our last business item is just subcommittee minutes. We have one set of facilities committee minutes from May 29th. Anyone have any questions or concerns about those? All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Dean, seconded by Tim, all those in favor?
Third by Will.